What is it like to be the first humans ever to enter a polar orbit around the Earth? What is it like to witness the vast white ice sheets of the North Pole, the South Pole from low Earth orbit? What is it like to try and capture this from the cupola of a Dragon capsule? What is it like to try and get out of your Dragon capsule at the end of your mission after splashdown without any outside assistance? Well, there's 4 people back on Earth who know the answers to all of those questions, and I was lucky enough to speak with them today. This is Fram2. First of all, thank you very much for joining us today. We're about a week on from your launch. You got back a few days ago. What is it like being back on Earth at home?
Real, I think. I think we need some time to process it. I think we're all just like still super excited from the ride, and yeah, it will take some time until we understand what happened.
I'm still feeling floaty. Sometimes I have the sensation that I'm going to float out of my chair and drift across the room, and then do something kind of weird like we did in space.
Everything good.
Awesome.
From here. I just run 2 kilometers this morning, so everything good.
I floated.
Awesome.
Okay.
You spent a few days in space, right? I'm sure the entire thing was awesome, but was there any particular part of the mission that you each, thought was your favorite moment of being in space with Fram2?
It's that's when we flew over the polar regions. That's the main reason why this mission exists. To us, when people say like Earth's a blue marble, it's a blue planet, but to us in polar orbit, it's more like a frozen planet. So it's give you a feeling of not the Earth, but another planet, icy planets such like Jupiter or Saturn moons. So very different impression.
Actually, the moment that I placed myself in the cupola and had a look outside, I have to say I was incredibly emotionally moved. You look around, you see the entire horizon of Earth around you. We happened to be over Antarctica at the time, which is an area that I've spent a lot of time skiing to the South Pole and the opposite part of the planet to the North Pole. So to see all of Earth and one of my favorite locations of Antarctica below me, or was it above me? Sometimes this terminology has no relevance up there, but that was particularly moving.
I think also I second that, Eric, and I would say I had something like a reversed overview effect. I was very critical of that. I was like, sounds like a made up thing, the overview effect, but looking down at the Earth and all the facets of the poles, I think you saw the Earth as like a perfect planet, but then all the stars, and I just had this really strong feeling of that we belong, like as humankind, to the stars, and we need to explore more.
I believe you have a feeling of belong to humankind because you fly in the low Earth orbit. If you happen like fly to Mars or further, you probably have a different kind of feeling, but yeah, we'll know.
And speaking to that kind of overview effect, did looking at Earth through the cupola, did that change any of your perspectives of anything back on Earth?
Low Earth orbit is not high. It's only 400, a little bit more than 400 kilometers high. But at that altitude, we already see very few human activities at daytime. But at night, we see a lot of city light. But daytime, especially in the polar regions, we see very few human activities.
Were you able to see any Aurora over those polar regions? Of course, on Earth, you look into the sky. Polar region's very famous for the Aurora in the sky. Were you able to witness that through the cupola?
We did, but we didn't share any footage Aurora because I think down from ISS he made it so well. So I don't think he'll win that competition. So we didn't share any, but we did see Aurora and.
Chun hasn't seen the 8K footage yet, and it's going to take some time to process it. But what we did see was the auroral oval and the bulging aurora with our elastic magnetic field stretch out from planet Earth, which was pretty breathtaking. And we did capture exactly what we were looking for, which were the ghost auroras, the continuums. the sort of like the white expanding light in the aurora that's 3,000 degrees Celsius, and also the fragments that are lit up signals of the upper Earth turbulence, these sort of like wavelengths that go perpendicular to the aurora and the magnetic field.
And the strongest aurora I see actually not Antarctica or Arctic, but somewhere between Australia and Antarctica. But as we flying further south, we'll see the sunrise at Dragon 400 kilometers high earlier than down below. So that's why when the Dragon already under the sunlight, but below not, but it's hardly to see anything star or aurora.
Yeah, the auroras are beautiful from the capsule, but I think all Earthlings have the best perspective of auroras from the surface. We've all seen them. They're incredibly special. So don't feel like you're missing out on anything. It's fabulous up there, but you get the best views of auroras from having your feet planted on planet Earth. They're beautiful.
I'm very much looking forward to seeing that footage that was collected. Your description makes it sound spectacular already. Did you have any prior expectations to how the polar regions would look like from space? Did they beat expectations, not meet your expectations, or how did it? What was it like actually witnessing that with your own eyes from space?
Actually, from my perspective, I was expecting to see a lot more of the Earth, the brown Earth within the polar regions, because when you're there, you do see a lot of that in Svalbard and Greenland. The perimeter of Greenland, for example, there's a lot of exposed Earth there. But when we looked at it from above, was completely white. So I think this is one of the most stark contrasts between the images that we see online of these various polar locations and what we experienced. As Chun said, it's kind of a white planet. That was our overall perspective of what we saw. In regard to Antarctica, very dark, just the perimeter, because of course we're on the dark side of the equinox, and although we would love to have seen Antarctica, where I spent a lot of time, equally it was somehow resonating, seeing it in its winter darkness too, in its winter coat, knowing that there are small clusters of humans down below there surviving that extreme environment, of course encased in their habs, if you like. Very special times flying over the North and South Poles, irrespective of how much light they were exposing.
It's reminded me of Europa.
I was also interested to see is like my home island and archipelago looks a little different to the world map. And I at first was like, is that Svalbard? Is this where I live? And then it took a few seconds before we identified it, because it's in the high Arctic and it's connected to ice to the North Pole. And then we realized that, of course, it is Svalbard. It has a very shape that's easy to recognize, but still it looked quite different to the world map that we are used to.
Yeah, that's right, because we always see images of it oriented north-south. But we're up there, and depending on how we are positioned in the cupola, we're seeing it upside down, left, right, whatever. It's slightly confusing, or it takes a while to recognize exactly where you are until you orient yourself correctly.
It's not easy to see Longyearbyen, but almost immediately locate the airport.
Yeah, I saw that video on that you posted onto X, and I was like,
here's the airport, maybe.
I think the airport is further there.
It is an airport.
Oh, maybe.
You can see that?
Myself, I am quite partial to spending a lot of time looking at Google Earth, and I was like, oh, you try to figure out what you were seeing and how to rotate it to fit it in. Looking out the window, did it look like you were looking at Google Earth, or was it completely different?
Completely different, especially in the polar region. Google Earth, it cannot show you the polar very well, because it's you're probably a user of a Google Earth, but the real impression is it's very different from looking at a static map of Google Earth.
I believe I'm correct in saying that Fram2 is the first flight of an American spacecraft, but actually without any Americans on board. Did that create any logistical issues? Because I don't know. I'm just asking because I'm just curious. I'm from the UK. I'm not American. Did that cause any logistical issues with that?
Yesterday we have debriefing. I briefly talked to SpaceX. I think it only happens with SpaceX, with Elon. How can you imagine you rented the entire spacecraft to 4 people, random people. Like I think it won't happen anywhere else. So it's a lot of trust to us. We really feel to appreciate.
And for you, Chun, Fram2 was your 1000th flight of all time. How did the environment of Dragon compare to a commercial airliner or a private jet? Was it more comfortable, less comfortable? How do they kind of compare?
It's very different in terms of passengers' experience. First, no flight attendant. So, and the most important difference is zero gravity. So you won't see zero gravity any other airliners. But other than that, the feeling of a ride, takeoff and landing, we say takeoff landing quite similar. Except you have a little bit more G load, but other than that, it's quite smooth.
I think one of the biggest contrasts between the two, I guess, is how you sleep on board Dragon. And I really had a chuckle the first time I saw Chun just floating in midair with his arms dangling below him like this in the most strange looking position, and we all slept in these strange positions, right? We would look at each other, and I was over in seat 4, and I remember waking up thinking to myself, well, I could be in a mattress now, because sometimes at home in bed, you kind of feel weightless and you don't feel any pressure from the mattress. And then you roll over when you're at home and you realize that, oh, well, I can feel all of this pressure. But of course, in space, you roll over and there's nothing there. You're just floating.
I must say that's 3 nights of one of my best slept 3 nights all time.
Speaking of the launch and the re-entry splashdown, how did those experiences compare to your expectations? Because I would imagine watching space films, right, it's like heavy G-forces, getting shaken about on the ride uphill, heavy impact splashdown. Was it like that, or was it kind of smooth, your experience throughout?
For space movies, you need drama. No drama here. It's a real life. So unfortunately, nothing happens. Everything's going very well. And
I'd say
fortunately, yeah.
Fortunately, yes, that's correct.
But yes, the centrifuge training, that was actually quite useful, because it's our first introduction to those kind of G-forces. But I felt those forces were more impactful during ascent and descent. You could really feel those forces coming back down, plunging through the atmosphere, the compression on the chest and the organs feeling that pressure, and also the face just being pulled back. We've seen images of that, but to have that and to feel that was pretty incredible.
I did feel my face pulling down a little bit, but I think everything quite within the limit. And the maximum G load that smashed down the orbit a little bit higher than our simulation. Actually, maximum was 4.75 G. So that's still quite affordable for every people.
But still quite significant when we are starting to deorbit, and I was lifting my hands to do the push to talk, and I was like, oh, this feels like 1 G. So I looked up at our G, and so I looked up at the accelerometer to check our Gs, and we were at 0.2. And I was like, oh man, we're in.
I tried to lift my head to try to look out the window, but I couldn't.
The helmet weighed like 20 kilos.
Yeah. And because we deorbit during daytime, so it's not so many plasma we've seen.
Yeah, and I think the hard bit was also once we were down on Earth, because we had this one research experiment with the unassisted egress, basically meaning we were egressing the spacecraft by ourselves, and just sitting there and trying to get up, it just felt as though there was like an elephant sitting on your chest. So I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna get up, but well, we all managed somehow. It just was very heavy. Like suddenly your body is just so heavy.
I talk about the physics. I look out the window, I see the clouds getting closer, and start we see a little bit of plasma, and we see the clouds start moving. It's just a physics. Everything fits physics very well.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that unassisted egress because it's the first time that it's been done. Obviously, going forwards for missions to the moon, to Mars, there's not going to be a support crew ready to help you get out of your spacecraft when you arrive, right? So this is really a really important thing. Did you have any expectations for how difficult that would be? Was it like really difficult for you to get out and get that cargo out, or was it just, you know, I just felt extra heavy?
Yeah, before the mission, we kind of we did an assisted egress and timed our baseline, so to speak. So I think our expectations were like, oh yeah, it's going to be a little bit harder. But personally, I wasn't prepared for how heavy your body feels and how heavy also the cargo felt. It was like 15 kilograms, I think, that we lifted out of it, and how unsteady you were on your legs, because suddenly your body is like, oh yeah, there are legs and you should use them, but how?
I was so disappointed in my own body after only 3.5 days. My body had completely forgotten what it's known its whole life, and that's gravity, and it's been made and developed to sustain 1G through evolution. And then after 3.5 days in space, my body had completely forgotten how gravity works. We got back to Earth. And I remember on the egress testing, we rolled down a ladder that we're supposed to climb up. And I was so confused why that ladder fell down.
Yeah.
It's not bad, not that bad to me. I even thought, because we landed on boat. If not on boat, if I haven't landed on land, so maybe I'll try possible to run 5K immediately after.
Somehow I think you might struggle.
But I think, yeah, it's
high ambitions.
Going back onto orbit, you had the Starlink laser connection in the trunk of Dragon, which gave you Wi-Fi on board. How reliable was that? Were you able to do everything you would have been able to normally do, just, you know, sat in an office on Earth?
That's how you see 15 minutes 1080p video getting posted so on X. So the links are pretty fast, and the latency is low, but it's not 100% available. But when it's available, it's great.
Very good.
It's higher speeds than our support team had on Earth.
Yeah. I was doing a conference call with family. I had, I think, 8 people or so pictures on the screen. So, you know, that's pretty impressive. Kind of a game changer, really.
I'm using Starlink right now. I have Starlink on my house, and the reported speeds from you guys were much faster than the reported speeds I have, because of course you had the direct laser connection. I'm going through the atmosphere, so I'm a little bit jealous of the connection that you had whilst in space, but either way, it's good to hear that it was working well. Of course, you brought up a lot of camera gear and stuff to capture stuff. Capture Earth and the atmosphere and the poles out of the window. On Polaris Dawn, they had to get some of their specialist equipment qualified through vacuum testing and things like that, because they obviously went down to vacuum for the EVA. Did you have to do anything similar for your equipment, or was it okay because you were going to be in a standard atmosphere the entire time?
Yes, everything has to be qualified.
Yeah, it's run through a rigorous qualification. Everything must sustain up to 6Gs, which is very difficult when you're bringing large cinematic lenses, specifically like my 100 to 300 millimeter has a lot of glass in it. And getting that to sustain 6Gs meant that we had to work very closely with the lens technicians at Canon and help us find the best solutions. The same with the cameras, but I knew the cameras would pass because I used them in polar environments already. I know they're only qualified to go down to -10, but I use them in -35 Celsius. And as far as the G-forces, I drive them on a snowmobile and shake them around all the time. So I was like, they'll be fine. But what was interesting was that a lot of these modern tools that we have on cinema cameras don't work in space. So the connectivity between lens and camera didn't always work, and also magnets did not work in microgravity.
Kind of rounding everything up, obviously it sounds like you had a wonderful time, but if there was one thing you could change about the mission, even if it's a tiny thing, is there anything that you would change in hindsight?
More time, yes.
Yeah, more time.
And I would like to capture more footage, but you know, sometimes my iPhone just flying away. It's hard time to keep it in my hand. But if I have another thing I want to carry, that probably matter glasses. That'd be very useful to capture things.
Yeah, I think we really maxed out the space to the full. So on the lower level, we always had the research experiments, one of the 22 research experiments we had going. Then on the mid-level, Chun was posting and sharing our journey. And then in the cupola, we had Jannicke filming the documentary. So it was fully packed. So just a few days more, a few weeks more, would have been perfect.
Yeah, Dragon turned into a 3-story building. It was quite impressive.
Yeah, I mean, from the outside, it doesn't seem that big, but obviously when you're inside and you're in 0G, it's a 3D environment. You can use every surface. Even looking at some of the images that were posted, you began decorating the walls, right? So what was it like being able to actually interface with an environment where you don't have a floor and you don't have a ceiling?
Actually, most of the time we do feel the ceiling. What's the ceiling? What's the floor? We only start to really feel 3D from the last day. That's my my feeling. I think we still have a sense of what is up or down.
Because of course we train in the Dragon simulated capsule. So and of course that training we are always oriented in this direction here. So we have that familiarity, and I think a way of overcoming the space motion sickness is to position yourself in an orientation that is familiar to you. And we all kind of tried that, and I think it worked to some level. But it was not unusual on board Dragon for us to have a conversation among the 4 of us, with one up here, one there, and like on all cardinal points of the compass. After we got used to it, we could just literally float around anywhere and be in any position.
Yeah, and we had one experiment also which dealt with like 3D spatial cognition. So how well can you navigate in 3D spaces? And just after we landed, we actually became better at that. So I think that's pretty amazing.
Awesome. And speaking of the experiments, one of the things that was conducted, which was kind of difficult to believe, was the first ever X-ray in space. What was it like? Not only were you, on a historic first crewed flight over the poles, you also conducted this historic first, the first X-ray in space. What was that like?
Yeah, I think that was such an incredible achievement because, of course, X-rays will be super vital for deep space missions. Because if you have bone loss or you fracture your bones, also for scanning electronics, right? So we also scan like our garments. It is vital. So this is such a big step forward, and it was also just so much fun. I think finding out how we best can conduct that, how you can have a stable setup for that, and we achieved it for several body parts. So I think that is just such a great success.
Yeah, we had this plan to strap the generator onto the side of Dragon, or to Velcro it down, or just give it some sort of stability. In the end, we just had to wing it, and I think you were floating in midair with the generator wedged between your knees, and I was on the other side with the detector kind of hugging it against my chest. And so long as we had the distance between the two, we could kind of do it anywhere, so long as the orientation was.
And I had my legs wrapped in the restraints in the seats just to anchor myself just enough time for the picture of the hand. Yeah. So it was a 3-man job, but we managed it.
SpaceX recommended us a long list of research projects where we can select from. And the X-ray project is on the top of my list because I think it's been very useful for long duration space flights in the future, such like to Mars and beyond. So that's why we select that research.
Yeah, of course, because again, as with when you get to your destination, there won't be anybody there to help you get out. When you're on the way, there won't be anybody else to help you, right? So you have to be able to do everything yourself in 0G in order to, make sure everyone's happy and healthy as you are on your way to the moon or Mars.
Yeah, Rabea pointed out we're not just X-raying body parts, we're also X-raying mechanical parts. So we can easily see if something's broken, we can X-ray it to see if we need to open up and fix the mechanical pieces, I guess.
Well, I want to be respectful of your time. I know we're coming up to the limit here, but very quickly, for all of you, is a space mission in the future on the cards? Would you go and do it again?
In a heartbeat.
Yeah.
3-day half a mission is the right duration for the first timer.
Yeah.
But yeah, if Starship one day become available, it's definitely I think it's anywhere beyond the low Earth orbit can be considered.
Well, I just, as we continue making spaceflight more available to regular people, I see us as normal regular people who haven't gone through the selection process of NASA or ESA, but we've gone through a recruitment process to come to this point. And we did find that Earth language needs to change when we get into space. We don't have the vocabulary to express 3D space. And a lot of like sayings that we say on Earth just didn't apply to our life in space. And we laughed at how non-applicable it was.
And mostly we also hope that just more people get access to space, right? Because if we want to be a civilization living and working in space, we need as many data points as possible. We need as many people as possible in space. So we're looking forward to a future where that's possible.
You can't go to Mars until you have a regular flight to the low Earth orbit.
We're the first 11 people in human history to have, of our own accord, been able to explore low Earth orbit beyond the ISS. And I find that quite incredible that Chun, as our mission commander, designed the orbit, told SpaceX where in space he wanted to go, and they worked together to make that happen. And we are only 11 people in total in human history have done that.
And we were very lucky and thankful that this convergence of time and experience across these 4 people happened to coincide with Chun selecting us to join this mission. And certainly I speak on behalf of Jannicke and Rabea, will be forever thankful.
Hey, I must say, after Polaris done, I see the mission organized so well. I felt a little bit nervous. It's not a competition, but but it is a competition, I must say. And after we Spectrum, we coming back. I must say I feel proud to our crew. We've done it well, I must say.
Awesome. Hopefully 11 of the first, with many more to come in the future. So thank you all very much for coming on. It's a pleasure having you on. Welcome back to Earth, and thank you very much. And hopefully there's a lot of exciting things to come in the future as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ryan.